I am an upscaling addict, but I'm not alone. The other month, when I was upscaling the video for Gorilla's Feel Good Inc., I happened upon somebody else who had already done it, and who had posted his efforts over on Vimeo. I rejoiced, for I learned that I wasn't alone in my upscaling addiction, nor in my tastes about what I was upscaling. But where we were different was how we went about our upscaling. On his Vimeo video, he had stuck closely to the source material. He kept the frame rate the same and minimised shimmer and artifacts by choosing a blobby style of upscale, rather than a sharp one. Given the cartoon style of the video, that's probably sensible. And I don't think anyone's going to criticise his upscaled version, whereas with mine you could argue that the upscaling artifacts, at points, make it look worse than the original. Upscaling doesn't give you something for free. The more you upscale something, the further it deviates from the original, and the further it ventures into the weird, abstract realm of neural networks. It's why you can't just upscale and upscale until it's got infinite detail. That extra detail is fake, and upscale too far and it makes the whole thing look fake. But in my opinion, if I'm going to spend several weeks of my life upscaling a video, I'm going to go as far as I think I can with it. No half measures. I want to see just how much detail I can extract from an image, and I want to up that resolution and frame rate as much as I like, even if it does result in some bugs and artifacts. My choice, and if you don't like it, then you can upscale that stuff instead. And that's when I found another upscaling addict with eerily similar tastes to myself, and is known only as the Art Master. He hand upscaled each and every one of the 4110 frames of the music video, White and Nerdy, and the results are stunning. I wanted to learn the ways from this true master of his craft. He said it seemed fitting to digitally restore White and Nerdy, because the copy on YouTube that most people will see is in a tragic state. It's not HD, only 480p, and from these telltale interlaced artifacts, it looks like half the video is missing. If we compare the YouTube original to his final version, the difference is night and day. But stop for a second and look. Do you see something? Something suspicious? Yeah, the original version is cropped, missing out on stuff at the top and bottom of the screen. As much as he'd love to take credit for hand drawing this extra detail, he didn't. He found a better copy of the recording to base his upscaling on. He spent considerable time searching for the best version of the video before he began the lengthy process of upscaling it, because there's nothing worse than spending almost a year upscaling something only to find a better copy somewhere else. He even checked out Weird Al's official DVD version of the White and Nerdy video, but that turned out to be just as bad as the YouTube version. The best quality version he could find was, quite fittingly, on Vimeo. He explained to me that while YouTube is the most popular, other sites often have different versions of the same videos, and for older videos especially, these can often be better than the YouTube version, as was the case with White and Nerdy. So while he has no idea where sites like Vimeo get their copy of the music video from, he's very happy that they exist. He admits he was a bit tempted to crop his upscale and to pretend he had worked miracles on the YouTube version, but ultimately he didn't do this because he loves the video and wants to give you the best version of it possible. Why hint at the effort and confuse people as to what the restoration's capable of? And that's ultimately what this project was for him. It was about collecting the fragmented remains of this music video and bundling them together into the best possible version available on the internet. So while the Vimeo copy was obviously the best to base the project on, it's not without its own problems, which we'll be getting to shortly. Firstly, he upped the frame rate from 24 to 48 FPS using a program called Dane, which uses AI to fill in the gaps between them. Upping the frame rate of something is itself controversial. Most movies are only 24 FPS. The Hobbit was an exception to this and was recorded in 48, but people complained that it was too smooth, that it made it look cheap, like a sitcom. There's this belief that lower frame rates in movies make them feel more epic and in some ways believable, because by distancing it from smooth reality it uses the power of your brain to bridge the gap. I guess the implication here is that fans of lower FPS have bigger brains or something. He then went off on a lengthy tangent, explaining to me how they were wrong. He insists that higher frame rates are always better and that sticking to the slideshow that is 24, just because we always have, is the digital equivalent of Stockholm Syndrome. It may be what we're used to, but being a connoisseur of the finer things in life, he wants more. And from the perspective of a video restorer, it's a lot easier to drop from 48 to 24 than it is to go from 24 back up to 48 again. So, at the risk of making his job redundant, he believes that every video should always be recorded in the highest quality and frame rate possible, and then dropped to cater to personal preference. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion about stuff, but if you disagree about this, then you're wrong. End of. So White and Nerdy started at 24 FPS and he upscaled it to 48, or 47.952 to be precise. You might notice that the version on YouTube claims to be 30, but that's a lie. It was uploaded with the wrong settings. You might think that 30 is bigger and therefore better, but it results in 1 in 5 being duplicate frames, which will make the video even choppier than had it been uploaded in the lower 24 FPS version instead. But he was cool with that, since it made his remastered version even better. Why 48 instead of 60? Well, since the original is 24, 48 means that it still uses all of the original images and it's just the new frames between these that risk artifacts from framerate conversion. That's half of them. But at 60 FPS, since that divided by 24 is 2.5, that means that just 1 in 5 frames are the originals, meaning that 4/5 of them are at risk of having artifacts. So it's more computing power and you lose some of the original information. He knows that the average person will consider 60 FPS to be better, but he didn't make this for the average person, he did it for art masters. 48 FPS doesn't just make things smoother, he thinks it makes people move more believably, even giving the illusion of more detail. I, for one, am sure I picked up on more subtle movements on faces than I ever did from the original. Just whatever you do, don't slow it down, or you'll notice the weird computer limitations of framerate conversions. This was one of the outtakes he saved for me because he felt it was genuine nightmare fuel. But nothing in life is ever easy, is it? Vimeo's video might be vastly more detailed than the YouTube one, but it had one horrendous downside, and that's its low bitrate. If you throw a complicated scene at it, like one with lots of grass or movement, it doesn't have enough bitrate to go around and ends up halving the frame rate. So bits of this video were only 12 FPS, which means the bugs with the motion conversion got even worse. He had a difficult decision to make. For these scenes, should he use the higher quality but lower frame rate Vimeo copy, or the rubbish but consistent YouTube one? Why not both, he hears you cry. He says it was too obvious where they merged, though he got away with it in some scenes such as this one. But you can see that the quality in the background surrounding the segue is quite a bit lower. But he felt it was worth doing, because converting the high quality but 12 FPS version of this clip made the wheel spin the wrong direction, and made it look like the grass was eating into the front of the machine. And yes, this was using Dane, which is regarded as one of the best framerate converters. That whole scene was a vehicle crash, motion-wise. This scene was uploaded at the wrong framerate in the first place, hence the ghostly blur you see around it. There was nothing he could do about that unless he redrew each frame by hand, which he says he seriously considered. In this scene it got even more confusing. Most of the scene ran at 24 FPS, but the bush in the background was only 12, resulting in strange juddering motion. So he had to use Dane on that separately, then merge it all together. He says working on this 3-second clip was 5 days of hard work well spent. Another example of using both versions of the video was with the dice roll. There was too much motion and too few frames to use anything but the YouTube copy of this scene. But the moment the dice landed, he switched back to the other copy again, which you can just about make out if you study each frame individually. In other scenes, you might think you noticed some unrealistic motion, but he can assure you that you also missed out on many examples in this video where the conversion remained very good. He thought at first it was just 2 scenes in this video that had dropped to 12 FPS, but actually there are like 7 or 8, some are just a few frames long. It was a long process of deleting all duplicate frames, then manipulating the converted footage about in the editor to get it all to sync up with the original again. He says it was crap. He then went off on a lengthy tangent about public toilets and how suboptimal they are in their current gender-divided state. He says if safety is the reason for this split, then it shouldn't be by gender, but rather be split between adults and children. As it is, he says you always see queues for the women's, yet none for the men's. It's incredibly lopsided and a poor use of real estate. He says he is all for the trans rights movement getting their own toilet. In fact, he wants every bit of the LGBT movement to get their own toilets in the hope that the whole toilet situation ends up getting so confusing and fragmented that the whole system collapses, leading to a golden age where one large unisex toilet becomes the norm. And in some of these scenes of his upscale, he wondered if these dropped frames were deliberate to give the impression of comedic motion. Is it still right to smooth that out, or would that be destroying the soul of the video? Ultimately, he felt he was overanalyzing it, and that probably even the editor of the original video hadn't put as much thought into this stuff as he had. He'll tell you what, when you study every frame of a video, you notice how many shortcuts and botches were made in the first place. And he's added a few of his own too. He thinks that AI is a more useful but less powerful tool than many people think. Even Dane has its limits. Which is why, to achieve best results, he used another program too, Paint. And he'll admit that if you pause the video at certain points, you'll spot these embarrassing image manipulations like this drawn-in racket during the sour cream scene. But in motion, they actually make things less distracting than the bugs the AI came up with in the first place. So he had the whole video in 48 FPS. Then he needed to upscale it. He warns of the dangers of upscaling. He says that art is never finished, only abandoned. You're free to invest as much time into improving something as you like, but you face rapidly diminishing returns which will burn you out if you're not careful. So with this project, he smartly discovered that halving the original resolution and upscaling that to 1440p quality yielded the best general results, so he went and did the whole video in that. This meant the whole video had already been upscaled to a decent quality, and could be released whenever he wanted, rather than to be left as a half-finished project on his hard drives forevermore, like so many of the doomed projects before this one. Speaking of doomed projects, he then went off on another lengthy tangent about shrinkflation, the process in which items seem to get smaller and smaller over time. He mentions how Toblerone was rightly blasted for how they lopped a huge amount of chocolate off their design the other year, but complains that Terry's Chocolate Orange has managed the same but more slyly by hollowing each segment out slightly. And he knows that cream eggs are smaller and worse tasting than they were before they were bought out by Kraft. And he swears that McCoy's crisps were 32 grams a few years ago and have steadily gone down to 30, then 28.5, then 27, and now 25, the same weight as standard crisps are. That's like one good mouthful and then you're done. He no longer buys these products, partly because he refuses to reward this practice, but mainly because he thinks that buying them would signal to the companies that we're stupid and haven't cottoned onto their sly scheme. And he claims to deserve more respect than that. In terms of resolution, the original White and Nerdy video was 720p, but thanks to low bitrate, parts can seem pixelated or blurry. If you upscale this, then it will still look pixelated or blurry, but he finds that by reducing the resolution and by upscaling that, it can look better. The question is, how low do you drop the resolution first? Like he said, he found half-resolution 360p to be a good compromise, but he also made a 540p, 270p, 198p and 135p version of each scene, then upscaled each of them to see which bits looked best. Faces and text look bad if you drop the resolution, so he typically left faces at 360, 540 or even original 720p resolution, but then upscaled to try and take the edge off the pixelation. Other bits of the image, on the other hand, would often look better at a lower resolution. We're talking about things like grass, trees and hair. So for these, he dropped the resolution, then used AI upscaling to fill in details which might not be realistic, but that look better at a glance. Particularly upscaled hair, which looks great. Truly what upscaling was made for. So he'd blend together 2, 3 or even 4 different upscaled images for each frame based on what he thought looked best, which is hard enough on a single image, but on some of the animated scenes became incredibly time consuming. Like he said, he didn't think he'd bother doing this on each and every scene, which is why he had a generic 360p upscale to fall back on in case he got lazy. He ended up manually tweaking about 85% of the scenes in this video. Some he'd attempt several times before he was happy with them. His main goals were to prevent faces and text from looking too weird, since that's the stuff that people will notice. Those were the boring bits. The fun bits were scenes like this park with lots of leaves, trees and grass. He went to town on these. Sometimes he'd denoise the upscaled pictures to increase clarity further and to reduce colour bleed. The other problem with upscaling is the shimmering it produces, especially when the camera's moving, details will transition in and out of existence every frame, and this gets worse as the resolution it's upscaled from decreases. It's an unfortunate side effect from upscaling. He wonders if this could have been reduced by upscaling before converting to a higher frame rate, but then even that comes with downsides. It's all a compromise. He expects to get comments saying how he should have done it, but he can assure you there would have been compromises with those approaches as well. Speaking of compromises, he then went on a lengthy tangent about vanilla and how it's a great flavour, yet for some reason is often used to describe plain ice cream. He thinks it's one of life's greatest injustices, and for all the horrible plain tasting vanilla ice creams he's had, he laments equally at the thought of all the nice ones he hasn't had in fear of them being plain. He wishes they could just be what they claim to be rather than to be some kind of sadistic surprise mechanic to capitalise on thirsty people on hot days. It was at this point that I ran out of time talking to him, so we won't be able to discuss the upscaling process any more than that, but the whole thing took him about 9 months and he is very happy with his baby. This has been a passion project, a tragic tale of addiction, like so many before him. He says that this project was never finished, merely abandoned, but he did it to a level that he's proud of, and more than that, to a level that he thinks represents what digital restoration can hope to achieve with the tools available in the year 2020. He expects technology to improve, so it will be interesting to see what's possible in 5 years or so. And this is why you should never delete the originals. Upscaling is a fun hobby, and produces the version that he'd rather watch, but if given the choice of storing just one copy, the original is the one that should be kept. Always. You can always turn that back into the upscaled one again, but you can't necessarily get the original back from the upscaled one. As a fellow upscaling addict, I can understand his passion. With a project like this, there are different stages to it, each rewarding in its own way. He enjoys decisions about how to approach the project, then leaving his PC on to do all the hard work is always satisfying. Then, at the end of that, he gets a sense of satisfaction and surprise when he sees how good the end result looks. It's an excuse to revisit media from earlier in his life, to analyse it in greater detail than ever before, and at the end of it, to be the proud owner of the highest quality version of it in the world. It's a bit like the thrill you get from being a dictator of a country, or a world record holder of sorts, but on a more pathetic, nerdier level, and with greater risk of copyright infringement. As fun as it is, he says it also feels good to finally move on from such a time-intensive project. Next he'll probably do Jizz in My Pants, and then to upscale the video of it. Amish Paradise would have been the next Weird Al one of choice, but he doesn't think the recordings have as much potential as the White and Nerdy one did. I've personally tried upscaling Smash Mouth All-Star, since the copy on YouTube is horrendous, but I don't think you can do much with it. That YouTube version is the highest quality recording of it, by considerable margin, and it's already so fake and processed that there's not much I can achieve by upscaling it. Unless they provide the source files, what you're seeing here is about as good as you can hope for. But there is hope for the future. Digital remasters are popping up for all the old classics. Pet Shop Boys remastered a load of their old videos just the other day. The way it's going, I reckon it'll only be a matter of time before companies pop up to professionally remaster things with help from AI. In a way, it's already happened. When The Hobbit came out in 3D, 5K, 48 FPS, I should have known that Peter Jackson was at risk of becoming an upscaling addict. And he has since become one, producing They Shall Not Grow Old, that thing with footage from World War I, all digitally remastered using a number of clever techniques. It's a very exciting time for this kind of stuff, and I'm happy to have been able to speak to the Art Master, whose White and Nerdy video truly is a work of art.